Today we're going to take a look at the Rapid Strike Urshifu League Battle Deck, which was released by Pokemon late last year. It's a fantastic place for brand new players to start, and it can be upgraded into a pretty solid deck for the standard format. So here is the deck list as we receive it straight out of the box. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through each of the cards in this list and why they are important. If you don't need to know those pieces of information and you just want to see the upgraded version, then there will be a timestamp down below. You can just jump ahead to that. We'll play a game, and I'll also show you a tournament-winning Rapid Strike Urshifu list that you might like to work towards if you are building this particular archetype. Let's start off though with the main attacker in our League Battle deck. We get given 2 copies of Rapid Strike Urshifu V and Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, and this card's actually very powerful, probably one of the stronger cards in Standard at the moment. It's a 330 HP fighting type VMAX Pokemon, which means that we need to evolve it from our Rapid Strike Urshifu V, and it has 2 very, very strong attacks. The first one, for 1 fighting energy, is Gale Thrust, which does 30 damage plus an extra 120 damage if you've moved your Rapid Strike Urshifu from the bench into the active position this turn. That means we're dealing 150 damage for 1 single energy. It's one of the most efficient attackers in the game, and 150 damage is probably going to be enough to half hit a lot of strong Pokemon, as well as taking some knockouts on some specific archetypes. I'll talk to you about those in a minute. The second attack that we have on this Pokemon is G-Max Rapid Flow for 3 energy. That's 2 fighting and 1 colorless. We can discard all of our energy off of our Pokemon and deal 120 damage to 2 of our opponent's Pokemon. That means that we can potentially knock out support Pokemon that are sitting on the bench, or we can put some extra damage onto the active on our opponent's side of the field if we'd like. This attack is very easy to power up, considering the fact that our V Battle deck gives us access to Rapid Strike energy. This card gives us 2 energy, fighting and water. It gives us both at the same time, as long as the Pokemon that this is attached to is a Rapid Strike Pokemon. The League Battle deck obviously is built around Rapid Strike Pokemon, so this card is very, very useful. We can attach it to our Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX and utilize G-Max Rapid Flow really, really easily. Now let's talk through some of the other Pokemon that we've been given. There's a couple of really good meta, or at least meta useful cards in this list. A couple that aren't so good, but we'll talk about them. Let's start off at the start, if we could start anywhere else. Cinccino is a really cool Pokemon. We get given 2 copies of Cinccino and 2 copies of its basic form, Minccino. And Cinccino is really cool because it's got an ability called Make Do. This ability allows you to discard a card from your hand, and then you can draw 2 cards from your deck. That can be really, really useful if you've got cards in your hand that you don't necessarily need, and you're looking for something in particular. Maybe you need an energy to get attacking, maybe you need a VMAX to start attacking, or maybe Cinccino could do the job for you. Very, very useful. Plus, in the League Battle deck, we can make use of Energy Assist for 40 damage. Costs 1 energy, we attack for 40 damage, and then attach a basic energy from our discard pile to one of our benched Pokemon. Maybe we've utilized G-Max Rapid Flow and we've discarded our energy, we can get them back with Cinccino. We also have 1 copy of Galarian Zigzagoon. You wouldn't think that a Dark-type Pokemon is particularly useful, but this one definitely is. We don't use it for its attack, instead we use it for its ability, Headbutt Tantrum. When we place this Pokemon onto our bench, we deal we put 1 damage counter onto one of our opponent's Pokemon. Now that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but the difference between 120 damage and 130 damage is sometimes very large, so we want to make sure that we're getting the extra damage when we need it. Plus, we can also utilize a copy of Scoop Up Net to try and use that ability again. Scoop Up Net picks up a Pokemon that isn't a V or GX from the bench, and then you can play it back down again. If you use Zigzagoon, you can get 2 damage counters, which is pretty solid. We also have a 3-2 line of Rapid Strike Octillery, which is a fantastic support Pokemon for Rapid Strike Urshifu, and is currently being used in some of the top tier lists for this deck, so this is a good card. Do not be fooled. Rapid Strike Search is the reason that it's here. Once during our turn, we can search our deck for a card that is a Rapid Strike card and put it into our hand. We can only do that once. You can only use 1 Rapid Strike Search per turn, but like I was saying before, maybe you just need a Rapid Strike energy. Maybe you just need your Urshifu to get attacking. That Octillery can do the job. Now, we also have Phalanx in the League Battle deck. It has Rapid Strike Squad for a fighting and a colorless energy. It does 20 for each Rapid Strike Pokemon in play. As a starting point, it's probably not that bad of an attacker, but it's not necessarily super good in the competitive scene because you are going to find that Phalanx doesn't deal enough damage for you. Still, though, relatively useful, and we could possibly take this card out onto the ladder and win some games with it, but ultimately I don't think that it's as good as the other cards in the deck. Those are our Pokemon, and we've got 17 in the deck, and ultimately I think all but 3 are really, really good, really, really strong, and really useful in a lot of standard decks. So picking this up, good choice. Let's talk about the trainer cards in this list. We have 31, which is quite a few. But the thing about this is all 31 of them are meta relevant. That is, all of these cards are used in standard legal decks that are winning on the standard ladder, so every single one of these cards is very useful. We'll start out on the left, Escape Rope. We can switch our Pokemon from the active to the bench, and our opponent does the same. That's very useful for getting our Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX into the active to deal extra damage with Gale Thrust. Similarly, we have 2 copies of Switch as well, which does the same thing, but just for us. And also, we could use Scoop Up Net to affect that ability as well. We also have a bunch of Pokemon Search in the list. Evolution Incense allows us to search out one evolved Pokemon from our deck and put it into our hand. That's good for getting Cinccino, it's good for getting Octillery, and it's good for getting Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, so very, very nice card there. We have 3 copies of Level Ball, which allows us to search our deck for a Pokemon with 90 HP or less, and if we have a look at our Pokemon in this deck, pretty much all of them that are useful have 90 HP. Cinccino has 90 HP, Minccino has 70, Zigzagoon has 70, and also Remoraid has 60. Unfortunately, we can't get our Octillery or our Phalanx with this card, but we can with Quick Ball. Quick Ball is very, very good, and it is a 4 of in every standard legal deck. We've been given 4 in this deck, so that is fantastic news. Play this card, discard a card from hand, and find one basic Pokemon from your deck and put it into your hand. We're going to be using that to find our Rapid Strike Urshifus. So lots of good Pokemon search, which is fantastic. We also have a little bit of disruption in Fan of Waves. It's a Rapid Strike card, which means we can search for it with Octillery, and we can utilize it to remove one special energy from our opponent's side of the field and shuffle it onto the, well, not shuffle it, place it on the bottom of their deck, which is super, super strong. A lot of decks in Standard are using special energy at the moment. Think Mew VMAX, think Single Strike Urshifu, that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff going around with that. We also have Ordinary Rod, which shuffles some of our Pokemon from our discard pile back into our deck. So even though we only have a couple of Rapid Strike Urshifus, we can get them back with this card. We can also get basic energy back, which is very useful. We have Pal Pad in the list, which allows us to get 2 supporters from our discard pile back into our deck, which is very, very strong. And we also have a couple of copies of Tower of Waters. Again, Tower Bus Retreat. Tower of Waters allows each of our Rapid Strike Pokemon to retreat for free instead of having to pay the retreat cost, which is really, really good, especially for Urshifu VMAX. Alright, Tool Scrapper is our final item card. It allows us to discard a couple of Pokemon tool cards from our opponent's side of the field, or our side if we want to get rid of them, although to be fair, this list doesn't really play any tools, so we don't need to worry about it. But like I said, each of those cards is meta relevant. You can use all of those in a standard legal deck and you would not be embarrassed. Let's move on to the supporters. There are again a lot of really strong supporters in this list. The main ones that I want to talk about: Professor's Research. This is a 4 of in pretty much every standard deck at the moment. Discard your hand and draw 7 cards. Incredibly powerful effect. Sometimes you might think, oh, I don't really want to discard 7 cards, but Professor's Research is too good not to play. Sometimes if you don't want to discard your cards, you just have to think of yourself, am I going to win if I don't have the cards that I need? And sometimes the answer is no. We also have 3 copies of Marnie in this list. Again, a very popular staple card. Each player shuffles their hand and places it on the bottom of the deck. You draw 5, your opponent draws 4. Can be very useful to slow your opponent down, and maybe you don't want to discard your cards and you instead want to place them back in the deck, Marnie is the way to do that. We also have Karina's Focus. This is probably the least useful of our supporters, but it's very useful in our deck specifically. We can search it out with Octillery because it has a Rapid Strike icon on it, and it allows us to draw cards until we have 6 cards in our hand. Sometimes that's all we need to do. We just need to draw a few extra cards to try and get attacking. Karina's Focus can do that. We've got 1 copy of Cheryl, which is a really useful and interesting supporter that a lot of decks can make use of. What it does is it heals all of the damage on each of your evolution Pokemon and then discards the energy from the Pokemon that were healed. Now for us, that's not necessarily that big of a deal because lots of the time we're either going to have 1 energy on our Rapid Strike Urshifu, or we'll have discarded all of them using GMAX Rapid Flow. So Cheryl can be very, very useful. And finally, we have 2 copies of Boss's Orders. We switch one of our opponent's benched Pokemon with their active. It means that we can target down some of their weaker Pokemon and take knockouts on specific targets. Again, each of those supporters is meta relevant. You will play almost all of them in almost every deck. So if you are thinking about playing the Pokemon TCG in a slightly more competitive manner, this deck is going to do the job for you. Finally, the energies in the deck. We've already talked about Rapid Strike energy, very, very strong. We also have 4 copies of Stone Fighting energy. When we attach this to one of our fighting Pokemon, it provides a fighting energy, and it also causes our fighting Pokemon to take 20 less damage from our opponent's attacks. That can be useful. It's not necessarily synergetic with our Rapid Strike VMAX, but it is definitely worthwhile. Got 4 copies of that, plus we also have 4 copies of basic fighting energy as well. Overall, if you are a brand new player and you're looking to play competitively, I'm going to say this, it's a definitive statement. I think that this is the best product that you can buy to jump straight into standard format. Urshifu VMAX is so strong, Cinccino is great, the list itself, we could literally take this out onto the ladder and win a game now, but instead of doing that, I'll show you a couple of small changes you can make to make this list just that little bit better. So I've made a couple of slight changes to this deck list. It all fits on one page now, which is fantastic, frankly, but you'll notice there's not too much change going on here. In general, like I said, this deck is so good, we don't need to change that much. What I've done is I've removed all of the Phalanx, and I've removed all of the Stone Fighting energy, and I've replaced them with a couple of extra cards that we can use to make our games a little bit easier for us. I've put in 4/4 Cinccino, so instead of having a 2/2 line, we've got a little bit of a thicker line. One of the things that we want to do in Pokemon is increase the chances of getting the cards that we want, so having more copies means we're more likely to draw into them. Same logic is applied to our Rapid Strike Urshifu and our Urshifu VMAX. I've gone to a 4/3 line of our Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX just to make it a little bit easier to get into those cards. Plus, I believe I've also got an extra Evo Incense, but you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if it is the same count as the regular deck because there's not much that we really need to do to it. So, with this list, if you've added the extra 7 cards, then you are going to have yourself a pretty solid time over on the ladder. I'll jump into a game now to show you how this deck, even though it's essentially straight out of the box, can win some games against some meta-relevant stuff. Time to get started. We have a solid opening start here. We've got Remoraid, Minccino, and we also have Rapid Strike Urshifu. Let's play Quick Ball first. I will discard Ordinary Rod and grab another copy of Minccino. I think we'll play that down, and then we will also grab ourselves Rapid Strike Urshifu. We want to evolve into our VMAX, so we'll play that down. Now, we are playing against Jolteon V. Now, Jolteon V is a very strong deck. Luckily, Urshifu VMAX has the weakness advantage over Jolteon, so I would expect to win here. I don't know, just a second, my screen's a little bit awkward here. Just a gosh darn minute, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just fix this. this is going to look really weird for you, and I hope that it doesn't distract you from what's going on. I just noticed that my name was cut off. I don't want to do that. That was embarrassing. Anyway, yeah, so Rapid Strike Urshifu has a good matchup against Jolteon. I would expect to win, but we'll show off the mechanics of the deck so that you can see exactly how it works, because we'll still be able to do exactly what we need to do. Now, our opponent has played down a couple of Jolteon, and they're going to use the attack Thunder Spear. That places 20 damage on one of our Pokemon in play. It doesn't seem like a lot, but in combination with Jolteon VMAX, it can be very useful. Going to place 20 damage on our Urshifu, which seems reasonable. We, on the other hand, have pretty much everything that we need to have a strong turn this turn. We are going to evolve into Octillery and then use Rapid Strike Search. I'm going to go for a Rapid Strike Energy here, I think. We need to attack, so why not search that card out? We can grab the Rapid Strike Energy, we can attach that to our Urshifu on the bench, and then with the Tower of Waters, which will give our Octillery free retreat, we can retreat into our Urshifu VMAX and take a knockout on this Jolteon. Now, we are taking a knockout thanks to weakness, which is fantastic, but obviously if we were attacking into a Pokemon that wasn't fighting weak, we'd be dealing 150 there because we've moved into the active position. Now, we take 2 prizes, and hopefully our opponent doesn't immediately scoop on us. That would be a little bit disappointing. One of the good things about this deck is it is super simple to play, in the sense that all we really need to do is that every single turn. We have pretty much all we need, which is fantastic. So hopefully we can keep it going here. Our opponent is going for a Drizzile. They'll use the ability Shady Dealings to allow them to search for a trainer card from their deck. It's worth noting that Shady Dealings Inteleon is probably worth picking up as well, especially if you have this League Battle deck, because Inteleon is generally the engine that Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX is played with. After this game, I'll show you a competitive deck list that features Inteleon that you might choose to use if you are interested. Now, our opponent has used Max Thunder Rumble and dealt a bunch of damage to us here. Now, we've been very lucky, and we've drawn into Karina's Focus. That is really good luck for us here. Means that we will be able to draw some cards. I'm going to play down Remoraid, I'm going to play down Urshifu V, and then we are going to utilize Karina's Focus. I'm hopeful that we can find an energy here. We haven't found one yet, but that's okay, because we have level balls in our hand. We know we have a ton of Cinccino in here, so we're going to grab these out, and this will allow us to use Make Do to draw some extra cards and hopefully find ourselves an energy. We'll throw down that second Cinccino, and then we will start using that Make Do ability. Actually, we should search out a card first. We will grab another Remoraid, just in case our opponent chooses to... actually, no, we can just discard it here with Make Do. Let's do that. We don't really need another Remoraid. Let's get rid of it. Make Do will discard a card from our hand, and we will draw 2 cards. Does not look like we have found the energy yet, so we're going to go one more time. We'll use Make Do here, and I will discard Boss's Orders. I don't think we're going to need it, and we have drawn into the energy, which is fantastic. I will attach that to our Urshifu, and now we can utilize G-Max Rapid Flow. We'll discard all of the energy off of this Urshifu to deal 120 damage to 2 of our opponent's Pokemon. I'll elect to choose the Jolteon in the active and the Drizzile on the bench. Since the Jolteon's in the active, we get the weakness effect there as well, which means that that Jolteon has taken 120 times 2 damage, 240, pretty solid. Okay, now, we're in a very good spot, because if we do manage to take a knockout on this Jolteon next turn, then we will win the game. We'll take 3 prizes and win the game. But, you know, if we were hitting for non-weakness damage, just for regular damage, we'd still be in a pretty good spot, because we do have Cheryl in the deck. We've got a lot of cards that we can use, plus we would have dealt a ton of damage to Pokemon already. So we would have been in a very strong position, and I mean, we still are. We have Switch in our hand. We have Urshifu VMAX in the deck, which is great. That's not on the deck, in our hand as well. We've got Energy, so we will be able to use Gale Thrust next turn. It's just a matter of what Pokemon will we be attacking into. Looks like our opponent is trying to set up a second Jolteon. Fair enough, they probably need it. Jolteon also runs a number of Cheryl, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see that coming out here too. A bit disappointing if it were the case. Looks like, though, they're just going to max Thunder Rumble, and we're going to win, ultimately, what was a very easy game. But you know what? We showed off all of the abilities that were important. The way that the deck works is relatively obvious from here. We switch into the VMAX and then Gale Thrust. But, hey, listen, the Jolteon's really strong. It's a really good deck at the moment. And you can see how easily this thing does what it needs to do in and out of Urshifu's really easily. So we've seen how strong Urshifu can be, and this list on the screen right now is probably one of the better versions of the deck. In the standard format right now, you'll notice lots of the cards are very similar for the ones that we have in the League Battle deck. There are obviously some differences, namely we have Galarian Moltres V, which is useful to attack into decks like Mew VMAX, and more importantly we have this Drizzile in Tele Online, which is a staple for Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, as well as a lot of other decks in the standard format. This, though, will not be too hard for you to pick up if you are playing relatively consistently. Lots of the cards in this list you get given for free from PTCGO or come with your League Battle deck, so definitely something to strive towards, and it is definitely a bit better than our League Battle deck. If you want to see a Rapid Strike Urshifu deck in action that's a little bit more serious, then click this link over here that's on the screen right now, and that will take you to a slightly older deck, which maybe you could use for some inspiration as well. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming along. Like the video down below, and I will see you next time for more from the Sableyes. Bye.